My true story. From Colorado, they gave me leftovers in a dog bowl and said it's all the same. I ate in silence. The next day, I called my lawyer and their landlord. Old hag, don't you know how to use chopsticks? Just eat from the dog's bowl. What's the difference? That's redundant. All food is the same, ma'am. You don't get to choose. Do you know you're wasting SSI money? You're a burden. They all laughed. My daughter-in-law, Dana, dropped the plastic bowl to the floor with a dull thud. Inside, a clump of leftover rice, a piece of burnt chicken thigh, and some limp, oil-soaked green beans. The bowl still had flecks of kibble dust on the inside. I recognized it. It was the same one used to feed their golden retriever. My grandson Ben, all of 15 and full of the casual cruelty that grows when no one teaches otherwise, smirked and raised his phone like he might film it. No one stopped her. Not my son James, who sat across the kitchen flipping through his tablet, pretending not to hear. Not the nanny, who was too busy scrolling on her phone to care. Just me, and the bowl, and the silence. I sat down on the bench by the sink, as I had every night for the past month, and ate quietly. The fork was plastic. The food was cold. I chewed slowly, not because it was tough, but because it gave me time to think, time to remember. 3 years earlier, I would have been sitting at my own dining table, in my own house, with my husband carving roast lamb and asking if I wanted another glass of wine. We had a little garden with sunflowers that always tilted toward the kitchen window. We had peace. Then came the stroke. He went quickly, one breath, then stillness. I remember the sound of the paramedic's voice. He didn't suffer. I also remember the silence that followed, the refrigerator humming, the air too heavy. After the funeral, I tried to keep the house, but without his pension and with the property taxes rising every year, it became too much. James offered to take me in. Just until we figure something out, Mom, he'd said. Dana was there, nodding and smiling in that way women do when they are performing patience. I agreed. We sold the house. Most of my furniture was donated. My dishes, my books, my framed wedding photo, boxed up and forgotten. At first it was fine. They gave me the guest room. We had dinner together, polite conversation. I helped with the laundry, folded towels, walked the dog. Then, slowly, things changed. Dana began making comments about how much electricity I used. James stopped involving me in family discussions. Ben complained that my presence made the house feel like a hospice. The guest room became a storage room. I was moved downstairs to the unfinished basement. It's quieter down there, Dana had said. Better for your blood pressure. Now, I slept beside the furnace, under a thin blanket, listening to the thump of footsteps overhead like a reminder I no longer belonged to anything. The dog bowl was new. It came after I asked, one night, if I could heat up my dinner. I don't like cold meat, I'd said, gently. Dana didn't answer. She turned, scraped my food into the dog bowl, and handed it to me. Food's food, she said. Tonight was no different. The laughter stung, but not like it used to. I was learning to wear silence, like armor. I finished eating, washed the bowl, and placed it back in the corner where the dog's water sat. Then I went downstairs, curled under my blanket, and stared at the ceiling. But I didn't sleep. I pulled out the little notebook I kept tucked in my pillowcase and wrote 3 things. 1. October 14, dog bowl again, called burden out loud. No reaction from James. 2. Ben laughed, encouraged. No reprimand. 3. Tomorrow, call Howard, check account, confirm if I still have access. Howard had been my husband's lawyer for 32 years. He knew everything about the trust, the investments, the quiet accounts we never told James about. I had not spoken to him in over a year, but I would now. Because they thought I was too old to fight, too small to be heard. But I wasn't stupid. And I remembered everything. There was a time when I was the only reason they had a roof over their heads. James was 27, newly married, and flat broke. He had student loans. Dana had credit card debt, and between the two of them, they could not qualify for a lease anywhere decent. Every application was rejected. Every bank said no, but Harold and I said yes. We dipped into our retirement, signed as guarantors, and in the end, I went ahead and signed the lease myself, just to make sure they had a start, just to help them breathe. It was a small house back then, 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, a patchy lawn, but they called it a castle. They cried the day they moved in, hugged us, promised Sunday dinners forever. I was still working part-time at the library. Harold still fixed shelves and told bad jokes to the clerks. Life was predictable. It was enough. Years passed. They moved again, then again. Each time it was me or Harold co-signing, stepping in when they needed paperwork, a letter of reference, or a little extra money to smooth over a deposit. And we gave it because we thought family meant something. Then Harold died. After 39 years of partnership, raising James, building a small life from next to nothing, he was gone in a blink. A clot, a fall, a final breath taken before I could say goodbye. The house we lived in felt cold without him. Big, too big. James came the day after the funeral, wrapped me in his arms and said, "You should come stay with us for a while until you figure out what's next." I remember how kind he seemed, how insistent, how Dana smiled and said, "We'd love to have you. It'll be nice for Ben." I believed them. I packed my clothes, I sold my car, I boxed up a lifetime of things and put the rest in storage. I moved into the guest room and told myself it was temporary, a few months to grieve, to settle, to breathe again. The first few months were soft. I was invited to dinner, Dana let me help cook, Ben asked questions about the library. We sat together at the table, passed mashed potatoes, talked about school, the weather, the past. Then, something shifted. Little things at first. Dana bought scented candles and said they bothered her allergies, so she asked me not to use my favorite lotion. She moved my rocking chair to the garage for space. Ben started sighing when I walked into a room. James got quieter. Then came the isolation. One morning, I woke up to find the guest room filled with boxes, Christmas decorations, old clothes. "Just for a few days," Dana said, "while we reorganize." But the boxes never left. My things were pushed to the basement. Then I was asked if I'd mind sleeping down there, just until the holiday rush was over. They brought down a mattress. Hung a curtain. No one mentioned moving me back up. From then on, I lived below their feet. I ate before them, or after them, or not at all. When guests came over, I was told to rest downstairs because there wasn't enough seating. My presence became an inconvenience. My voice, an interruption. They called it practicality. But I knew better. They wanted me small, invisible, silent. And I was for a time. But what they forgot was this. I had once built homes from nothing. I had negotiated leases, paid mortgages, survived loss, raised a boy into a man. I wasn't just an old woman in a basement. I was the reason their name was ever on a mailbox, and I still remembered every document I ever signed, including the very first lease James and Dana ever lived under, with my name on it as a guarantor with full legal standing. I was not helpless. I was just waiting. They never hit me. No bruises, no broken bones. Nothing that would land them in jail or show up on an ER report. But that does not mean I was not hurt. Some wounds do not bleed. Some abuse slides under the skin like poison, slow, invisible, and devastating. It began with the fridge. One day I reached for the orange juice and found a padlock on the refrigerator door. Dana stood behind me, arms crossed. "We're on a strict grocery budget," she said. "You snack too much at night. This is just for portion control." She handed me a mini cooler. Inside was a single sandwich, a small apple, and a bottle of water. I nodded and said thank you. The next week, I went to use the upstairs bathroom, the only one with a bathtub, only to find the doorknob gone. Just a hole where the handle used to be, sealed with duct tape and a note. "Do not use. Leaks. Waiting for plumber." But there was no leak. I heard Dana laughing on the phone that night. "She's got a toilet in the basement. She doesn't need a second one." Old people think they own the place. I stopped asking for the tub. I stopped asking for anything. Ben began to mock me openly. He was only 15, but already sharp-tongued and mean in that careless teenage way that comes from watching your parents roll their eyes behind someone's back. At dinner, he'd lean away from me like I smelled foul. "She smells like old closets and dead skin," he once said to a friend, not even bothering to whisper. "She's like a zombie with mothball perfume." I tried to smile through it. I tried to tell myself he was just a child. But a child learns from someone. One afternoon I walked past the kitchen while Dana was on the phone. I heard her laugh, bitter and sharp. Yeah, she still lives here, still breathing, still sucking up our SSI threshold. It's like having a fungus attached to your W-2. I paused in the hallway. She continued, you know what they should do, just give you the option to transfer the benefits to someone useful, not someone who spends all day rearranging cough drops and watching the Weather Channel. James was home. He didn't say a word. I heard the clink of his coffee cup against the counter, the silence of consent. I walked back to the basement and wrote it all down. I had a notebook, small and brown, that I kept under my pillow. October 22, locked fridge, given one sandwich for entire day. October 25, bathroom locked. Told leaks, no plumber has come. October 27, Ben called me zombie with mothball smell. October 30th, overheard, fungus on W-2, transfer benefits, old closets. James said nothing. I did not cry. I did not scream. I wrote it down because I knew what they were doing. It was called invisible abuse. The kind that does not show, the kind that people think is too petty to matter. But it mattered. Every lock, every insult, every snide remark. It built a wall around me, brick by brick, until I was no longer a grandmother or a mother or a person. I was a liability. But I was still listening. And I was still documenting. And one day, those little notes would become evidence, because what they did not understand was that silence is not surrender. Sometimes, it is strategy. The morning after the plastic bowl incident, I took my tea slowly. Not because I was tired, but because I needed silence to plan. Dana was out, Ben was still in bed, James was at work. I had the house to myself for 90 minutes. I walked to the back corner of the basement and pulled out the shoebox where I kept old phone numbers, tax documents, and handwritten notes from the days when Harold and I still balanced ledgers together over the kitchen table. Howard's card was there, pressed between a receipt for prescription glasses and a clipping from Harold's obituary. I dialed. "Margaret!" came the voice, gravelly but sharp. Been a while. Howard Feinstein, 83 years old, retired but not disconnected. He had been Harold's attorney, financial advisor, and poker buddy for 30 years. I told him what had happened. I told him everything. He didn't gasp. He didn't pity me. He listened like a man who had seen this before. "I'm going to look into your accounts," he said. "No moves yet, just eyes open." 3 days later he called back. "Margaret," he said, "do you remember the Vanguard account Harold opened in 1998, the one you both signed?" I did. It was meant for our twilight years, just-in-case money, the kind you forget about so you don't touch it. "It's still active," he said, "and you're still listed as a 30% co-owner. James has been drawing from it." I froze. "What?" He listed himself as primary caregiver on a benefits application, claimed you were financially dependent, that you were not managing your own funds, and that you gave verbal consent to transfer control of all assets to the household for streamlined support. He paused. "Margaret, it's fraud. Federal. And I've seen this story play out before. They call it help until they're holding the deed to your life." My heart beat loud in my ears. He continued, "Do you want me to begin collecting the records?" I said yes. The next day, I began documenting everything. I photographed the plastic bowl next to the real dishes, the grease stains, the label still reading Buddy's Treats on the underside. I hid a small voice recorder under the couch cushion. I caught Dana saying, "She should be grateful we even feed her. I swear to God, the next time she whines about cold food, I'm putting a leash on her." Later, I recorded Ben telling a friend, "We get extra housing credit because of her. It's like having a tax break that complains." I uploaded it all to a secure folder Howard sent me, and I waited. Each day I smiled politely. I ate what they gave me. I nodded and said thank you. I played the part of the forgetful old woman who didn't know a plate from a trash can. But behind my eyes, the numbers lined up. Dates, documents, statements, slurs. I was not just gathering information, I was preparing for war. Because they thought feeding me from a dog bowl was the worst they'd done, but what they didn't know was that they were the ones about to be caged. It was just after noon when I made the call. The house was quiet. Dana had taken Ben to a soccer tournament in Boulder. James was working late. I had 4 hours to move freely without eyes on me, and I intended to use every second. I walked upstairs with my notebook in hand, the one where I recorded everything, dates, words, threats, the slow undoing of my dignity. I took the kitchen phone. Not my cell, that one Dana checked weekly, but this landline, mounted to the wall near the back pantry, still worked. I dialed the number written in fading blue ink at the bottom of a recipe card. Cheryl speaking. Cheryl, I said, my voice firm but even. This is Margaret Lawson. I'm calling about the house on Willow Creek Drive. The one you own? I believe I was one of the original co-signers on the lease. There was a pause, then, Margaret, of course. You're still living there, aren't you? I looked at the stained plastic bowl on the drying rack. I am, I said, but I doubt you know under what conditions. Cheryl grew quiet. She didn't interrupt. She let me explain. Every detail. The padlocked fridge, the isolation, the bathroom I was banned from, the basement room that was really a furnace closet, and most importantly, the illegal tenant. I'm sorry, she said slowly. Did you say tenant? Yes, I said. A student named Ava lives in the basement, pays rent in cash to Dana. There is no formal sublease, no notice to you, and she is not listed on any documentation. Cheryl exploded. I am going to tear that lease apart. I explicitly stated no subleasing, no modifications, no off-the-book arrangements. She's been living there for over 6 months, I added. Dana has collected roughly $3,000, 0 cents. None of it reported. The student thinks it's legitimate. Cheryl exhaled through her teeth. Margaret, she said, her voice low, you just gave me every reason to void their contract. I'm calling my attorney today, and if they so much as blink wrong, I'll have the cops knocking. Good, I said. I hung up. 5 minutes. That was all it took. 5 minutes to turn the tide of 2 years of silence. I called Howard next, gave him the update. He asked me to upload everything, the photos, the recordings, the bank statements, to a secure cloud folder. It's time, he said. He didn't elaborate. He didn't have to. That evening, I slipped the flash drive with my backups into a plain manila envelope, sealed it, and walked to the post office. Addressed it to the Colorado Department of Human Services, Elder Protection Division. I paid extra for certified delivery. That night, Dana came home, beaming about Ben's soccer win. She tossed me a plate of leftovers and told me to heat them when the microwave's free. I nodded. And waited. 3 days later, Cheryl showed up at the front door, with a clipboard and a sheriff's deputy. I wasn't there to see the first confrontation. I watched through the basement window, but I saw Dana's face collapse in real time. Cheryl pointed. The deputy nodded. Dana gestured wildly. James came out halfway through, shirt untucked, trying to defuse, but it was too late. They were served. Notice of lease termination, 72 hours to respond, immediate review for sublease violation. The next morning, Howard called. They've opened an investigation, he said. Your case is now with the state ombudsman. You'll be contacted shortly for an interview. Also, Margaret, the department received your documentation. They've flagged James and Dana for fraudulent reporting on a federal housing and caregiver assistance application. My hands trembled. Does that mean they'll be charged? Not yet, he said. But they'll be audited, and if the numbers don't match, they could be looking at serious consequences. Later that week, Ava came downstairs. She had a backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes wide with confusion. I heard everything, she said. She had been told by Dana that I was a great aunt from out of state with dementia, that I stayed in the basement voluntarily to avoid confusion, that I liked the quiet. She believed them. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't know. I waved her in, offered her tea. She sat across from me at the small table, staring at the walls as if seeing them for the first time. You were locked in down here? She asked. I nodded. 2 years. Her eyes filled with tears. They told me you wandered, that you didn't like light. I looked at her, this young woman who had unknowingly paid rent to my abuser, lived above my head while I was called a fungus, fed like a stray animal. And I forgave her, because she had the decency to feel shame. We sat in silence, broken only by the kettle. Then I handed her the notebook. the one I'd been writing in since the first insult, since the first plate of cold food. She flipped through a few pages. "Are you going to press charges?" she asked. I smiled. "Dear," I said, "I already have." The masks came off fast. It began with a knock at the door, sharp, deliberate, unmistakable. Dana opened it with her usual dramatic flair, only to freeze mid-sentence when she saw two federal agents standing on the porch. One flashed a badge, the other held a clipboard. "Mrs. Lawson?" he asked. "That's me," she said, blinking. "We're here regarding a federal inquiry into benefits fraud related to your household's caregiver status and housing claims. We'll need to see all financial records for the past 2 years." James came down the stairs half-dressed, his face pale. Ben hovered in the hallway, mouth hanging open. No one spoke. I watched from the staircase, no longer in hiding, no longer invisible. The agents moved in with professional calm, taking note of the layout, asking for bank statements, tax filings, lease agreements. Dana stammered something about misunderstanding and technical errors. James looked like he was calculating how long it would take to delete an entire hard drive. But it was too late. Howard had already submitted the documents, the recordings, the screenshots, the notebook. Every slur, every transaction, every lie. The next day, Cheryl delivered the eviction notice in person. I happened to be upstairs when it happened. "Due to material breach of lease agreement," she said coldly, "this tenancy is terminated effective immediately. You have 30 days to vacate. Any further violations will be met with legal action." Dana started to cry. James begged. Ben slammed a door and screamed, "This is all her fault," while pointing at me. But I did not flinch. I stood still at the top of the stairs, one hand on the railing, watching the chaos I did not create, but no longer had to survive. That afternoon, I received a call from the Office of the Ombudsman for the Elderly. A woman named Lydia spoke gently, like someone who understood long silences. "Mrs. Lawson, we've completed our preliminary review," she said. "You are officially documented as a victim of financial and emotional elder abuse. We are initiating protective services. You'll be assigned a caseworker to assist with housing, asset recovery, and transitional care." I closed my eyes. Not because I was tired, but because for the first time in years, I was safe. 30 days passed quickly. I watched them pack. Dana cried over designer purses she could no longer afford. James got quieter with each passing box. Ben refused to speak to me at all. And when they left, bags in hand, pride in pieces, I sat in the kitchen where they once fed me scraps and made myself a full meal, on a real plate, from my own fridge. At the table I paid for, with dignity no one could take again. They used to say I was too old to live on my own, too fragile, too confused, too far gone, but here I was, standing in my own kitchen, sunlight spilling across the counter, a warm loaf of bread cooling by the window, the scent of cinnamon filled the air, the kettle whistled, and no one yelled at me for being in the way. After the investigation, I was granted temporary housing through a senior protective program. Howard helped unlock the dormant retirement account Harold had set up in both our names. Money I was told was gone years ago. It was not gone. It had simply been buried. Within a week, I had a clean, quiet apartment overlooking a park. 2 bedrooms. One for me, one for guests, or someday for someone else who needed a place to land. Lydia, from the Ombudsman's office, connected me with a local nonprofit called Protect Our Elders. They helped coordinate the move, found volunteers to paint the walls, and even arranged counseling sessions with women who'd lived through the same quiet brutality I had. But I did not want to stop at survival. I wanted to create something, so I opened the Quiet Table. Just a small corner bakery with room for 8, no frills, no loud music, just good tea, fresh bread, and an open seat for anyone who needed it. On the wall near the front, I hung a sign. "No one eats in the dark here." Every Friday we host story hours, not for children, but for seniors. They come to share memories, grief, jokes that no one else laughs at anymore. I serve tea. I listen. I remember. Ava, the student who once lived upstairs while I was locked below, visits often. She brings friends now. They sit with the women and ask questions that matter. They learn what silence costs and what listening can restore. And me? I eat on real plates, with real forks, At a table I set myself, because I no longer eat in the dark, and I never will again. 1 year later, the quiet table was more than a bakery. It was a refuge. Every morning the smell of honey biscuits and buttered scones spilled onto the street. Locals came not just for food, but for breath, for pause, for permission to be human in a world that often forgot how. The walls were lined with photos, not family portraits or award plaques, but candid snapshots of real life. A man helping his mother tie her scarf, a woman writing a letter she never intended to send, a boy hugging his grandmother after school. People didn't come for coffee. They came to be seen. I had become something of a host to the invisible. The widows, the overlooked, the overworked caregivers, who were once daughters and now just dishwashers in their own homes. The women who carried grief like groceries, tightly pressed to the chest, so no one could judge them for how heavy it had become. We started a weekly gathering called Speak Even Softly. No microphones, no stages, just a long table, a warm kettle, and a question written on a chalkboard. What's something you wish they'd asked before you gave everything? What did silence cost you? What would you tell the girl you used to be? They came, they answered. Some stayed until the light faded from the windows. Others just left notes in the jar by the counter, sometimes folded tightly, sometimes scribbled angrily. I wanted someone to stop him. I gave up law school to change his diapers. I don't know who I am when I'm not taking care of someone else. And through it all, I listened. That was the lesson, really. They said I was too far gone, that I would not notice the bowl I ate from, the door they locked behind me, the way their voices tightened when I entered the room, but I noticed everything. And I remembered it all. Then, one afternoon, the front bell chimed, the soft ring we installed to signal new stories at the door, and in walked Ava. Older, confident, eyes brighter. She held a tote bag, worn at the corners, and a folder tucked inside. I came to thank you, she said. She stood by the counter as if unsure whether to order or apologize first. You didn't owe me anything, I told her. But you changed everything, she said. She was finishing a degree now, social work with a focus on elder care and intergenerational trauma. She wanted to start a resource hub for students with unstable housing, the kind of thing she wished she'd had back when she lived in a stranger's basement, unaware that a woman was being imprisoned behind the furnace. I want to work here, she said, even just part-time, just to learn from you. I didn't answer right away. I poured her tea. Honey mint, Harold's favorite. She sipped. She smiled. And I saw in her the beginning of something that had taken me a lifetime to build. Of course, I said. You'll start next Monday. She became our best listener. She memorized the regulars' drinks. She read their body language like Braille. And when someone cried she didn't offer tissues, she sat beside them until they breathed again. At the end of each shift, we would sit together near the window. She would ask questions. I would share what I knew. Not wisdom exactly, just memory. Just proof that even the ones they call too far gone can become the ones who show the way forward. One afternoon, she brought in a box. Inside were 3 thick binders and a handful of printed flyers. I'm starting the project, she said. The one I dreamed of. It's called The Second Room. It's going to be a center for students who have nowhere safe to sleep, nowhere to land when family isn't family. She paused. You know what it's named after, don't you? I did. That second room, the one I was locked into, the one they said was enough for me, the furnace closet that became my cage. It became her reminder. No one should live in a second room, she said. Not unless they choose it. I wept that day. And not because I was proud, though I was, but because I saw it clearly, that pain had not broken us. It had carved space for something new. One evening, Ava handed me a card. Inside was a quote in her own handwriting. They said I wouldn't notice, but I noticed everything, and now so does the world. I keep it framed above the register. Next to it hangs a copy of the original lease I once signed, the one they thought I'd forgotten. Below that, a single spoon rests in a shadow box, the one from the bowl they fed me with, now polished and useless, a quiet reminder that even the ugliest tools can become artifacts of justice. We never saw Dana or James again. Last I heard, they'd moved to another state. Their credit shot. their record marred by audits and investigations they could not erase. Ben had dropped out of school, apparently blamed his failures on family drama. But I didn't chase the ending. I let the story rest, because I was building a better one. On the first anniversary of the Quiet Table, Ava surprised me. She and the women from Speak Even Softly gathered to unveil a new installation at the back of the bakery, a bookshelf filled with blank journals, each with a small label inside that read, "For the stories no one let you tell. Customers can take them freely, or fill them and return them, or burn them if that's what it takes." Healing looks different for everyone, but it begins with being allowed to speak. And me? I still bake. I still serve. I still sit at the window and sip tea while watching the morning unfold. But most of all, I still listen. Because silence is no longer my prison, it's my promise. That no one else will be fed in the dark. That no one else will believe they are too far gone, because now they know better. Now, so does the world. The first snow of December came early that year, thick, soft, and quiet, like a forgiveness the sky had been holding in. I watched it from the window of the Quiet Table, my fingers wrapped around a mug Ava had gifted me. It said, "World's toughest soft-spoken." That winter marked 2 full years since I left the basement behind. 2 years since I ate out of a plastic bowl meant for a dog. 2 years since I stopped being erased and started being remembered. But now, something else was beginning. Ava was getting married. He was a gentle man named Joel. A carpenter kind with his words, with hands that had never once pointed in blame. They met through her housing project, volunteering to install doors for women's shelters that had never had locks before. Their love was quiet and grounded, the kind that looked like folding laundry and showing up on time. He asked for my blessing one afternoon over peach cobbler. "She doesn't need permission," he said, "but I'd like your trust." He had it. The wedding was held in our back courtyard, the same place where Speak Even Softly had started. The tables were draped in linen, the chairs mismatched, each donated by someone who had found a second beginning here. And when Ava walked down the aisle in a dark green dress, her hair pinned back with tiny paper cranes, I wept for all the women who never got this day, and all the ones Ava now carried with her. At the reception, she stood and made a toast. "This bakery," she said, "was never just about bread. It was about rebuilding. It was about a woman who taught me that silence is not failure, it's strategy. That survival is not weakness, it's witness." She looked at me. Everything I am is because she noticed what the world tried to hide. I looked down. My hands trembled. Not from age, but from awe. Later that night, after the guests had left and the courtyard lights twinkled like faraway stars, Ava and Joel sat with me at the long table, eating leftover cake with forks that did not match. "We have a question," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Already?" Joel laughed. "We want to name the community wing of the second room after you," she said. "A full expansion. Classrooms, legal aid clinics, walk-in support, all under your name." I felt the words sit in my chest like warmth instead of weight. "What name would you give it?" she asked. I paused, thought of all the women who had walked through my door in the last 2 years, women who had whispered truths into teacups, women who left parts of their stories in margin notes, women who came with shaking hands and left with steady feet. "Call it the listening room," I said, "because that's where healing starts." They nodded, and so it began. Construction started the following spring. Volunteers, donations, city grants, everyone pitched in. The opening ceremony was held on a Tuesday morning, and the mayor showed up with a check and tears in her eyes. The building was simple, sunlit, and open. No locked doors, no small rooms, no basements. At the front entrance hung a brass sign that read, "The Listening Room, founded in honor of those who were once silenced." Inside, a framed photo hung beside the reception desk. It showed me at the quiet table, seated across from Ava, both of us mid-laugh. Not posed, not polished, just real. Below the photo, a quote carved into wood. She waited, she remembered, she reclaimed. Months passed. The listening room grew, and so did I. I slowed down, yes. My hands stiffened in the cold. My eyes needed brighter lights for reading. But I felt no decline, only deepening. I felt more mine than I ever had before. I started writing again. Little essays, reflections. Ava convinced me to record them as audio diaries. We called them Crumbs of Courage. Every Monday we released a new one, 5 minutes of memory for women drinking coffee, before court, before caregiving, before another day of being strong for everyone else. The episodes spread. They reached libraries in rural towns. They played in shelters. They made it into the pockets of daughters who didn't know their mother's pain. And through them, I lived twice. Once in my time, and once in theirs. Then, last fall, something unexpected happened. Ben showed up. The boy who once called me a zombie, who laughed when I was fed from the floor, who watched me disappear and never said a word. He was taller now, thinner, eyes tired. He came into the bakery at closing time, hat in hand, words stumbling. "I heard about the place," he said. I didn't know how much I didn't know. He told me he'd left home at 19, tried to escape the weight of our silence. He'd worked jobs, drifted, got clean, got help. "I don't want anything," he said. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I looked at him for a long time. "I forgive you," I said, "because someone once forgave me before I deserved it." He cried, quietly, the way broken boys do when they finally see the wreckage they walked through barefoot. I made him tea. He visits now. Not often, but enough. He volunteers at the listening room sometimes. He takes notes at Speak Even Softly. He doesn't pretend to be better than who he was, but he shows up, and sometimes that's enough. As for me, I still bake. I still teach. I still keep a seat at the back table open in case someone walks in and needs it. I tell people now, legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you reclaim after they try to bury you. It's what you rebuild when they call you useless. It's what grows when you water the parts of yourself they said were already dead. And me? I've bloomed. Not out of spite, out of silence and survival and sweetness, like cinnamon in the air after snowfall. Because I was never too far gone, I just hadn't arrived yet. Thank you for listening to my story. Maybe you know someone like me, someone quiet, someone overlooked, someone who didn't fight back because they were too tired or too kind. But let me tell you this, silence is not surrender, it's patience. And when the world forgets who you are, you remind them, not by shouting, but by surviving long enough to speak the truth on your terms. If this story stayed with you, if it stirred something in your chest, anger, hope, understanding, then don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, where the quietest women finally speak. Because revenge has no expiration date, and wisdom doesn't shout, it remembers.